Just a couple of questions. The first question I have is, I've heard this entitled that it's a welcoming resolution. I review this, it looks like, before I even make any say, I just want to ask a couple questions. Does the resolution in front of us offer any legal protections for our immigrant population in Dauphin County? Does it offer any protections?
No, not beyond what they have here.
Does this resolution offer the county any new legal authority or powers that are currently not provided under the county code?
No.
Can any resolution this Board of Commissioners adopt supersede the 1620 rights of independently elected officials like the DA, the sheriff, or the separation of powers that are guaranteed in the Constitution of the courts, who, by the way, who are also independent elected officials?
That is what Sheriff Chemansky was discussing, and no, you cannot supersede those powers.
I just want to clarify 1620 for those of you who don't know that, because the things that we're talking about are the law and the details of the law. And I want to make sure who I am, and being from Steelton, Pennsylvania, growing up in a town where immigrants made up the makeup of this town, having fathers and grandfathers work in a steel mill, I want to make sure our immigrant community is protected. But I will tell you, I'm not for politics that don't protect you. And I will be very clear in making that statement. While the Board of Commissioners has authority to set county policies for offices we directly oversee, Pennsylvania law is very clear that we cannot take away the rights of other independently elected officials. Under 1620 of the county code, row officers, like the sheriff and the district attorney, have their own legal authority to manage their employees and carry out their duties. That means a county welcoming policy may guide our departments, but it cannot force those independent officials or their staff to act against their own responsibility under state or federal law. Federal and state law supersede county law. In short, we can set direction for our own offices, but we cannot override the legal powers given to other elected officials. Courts have consistently upheld that commissioners' policies and collective bargaining functions cannot intrude on the core rights and obligations of other elected officials. To attempt to compel compliance in a manner that interferes with their discretion, particularly in law enforcement or prosecutorial decisions, would exceed the authority of the board in conflict with 1620 as well as with state and federal law. But more importantly, raising a political flag for personal gain on an issue as complex and sensitive as immigration may feel symbolic, but symbolism without substance can be very dangerous and very reckless. When we adopt policies that suggest protections where none actually exist under state or federal law, we create false hopes for some of the most vulnerable people within our community. Families who may already live in fear of deportation could mistakenly believe that a county policy offers them legal protection when in truth, it does not. That false premise can lead to devastating consequences. A mother from my community may come forward thinking that she's shielded by a county policy, only to discover that federal law still applies to her and her situation is unchanged. Instead of protecting her, we may have placed her in greater danger. That is the cruel irony of using county government as a stage for political theater. It risks harming the very people that we claim to protect. As leaders, our obligation is not to inflame political debates or score points. Our duty is to speak truth, uphold the law, and protect vulnerability with honesty and integrity. Immigration is a federal issue. I don't like what's going on. I do not like what's going on. And pretending that county policy can overrule federal enforcement doesn't change reality, it confuses it. When confusion surrounds life and death decisions, it is the vulnerable children, families, and those without power who bear the cost. If we truly care about protecting people, then we must be courageous enough to reject hollow gestures and instead focus on the things that we can do. Providing safe spaces in our community, ensuring access to human services, treating every individual with dignity, and working together across all levels of government to find real solutions. Anything less risks turning the most vulnerable among us into pawns, which they already are in a political game. And that is something that I will not support or accept. Thank you.
Last Wednesday, I asked some questions from the individuals who were here, and I think every single person here and throughout the county has been bombarded by press coverage, and whether it's PennLive or on TV stations, about the county voting on a welcoming county resolution. I have to ask the solicitor, because it was brought up here today, it's true, we vote on agenda items in front of us. That's our job. Mr. Solicitor, is there a welcoming county resolution on today's agenda?
No, it's a contracting policy.
Commissioner Douglas is oversight of the sheriff and district attorney. Did you reach out to either one of them during any of this time to discuss this matter?
This does not direct their office in any way. This is a contracting, and the sole contracting authority, as Mr. Owens just stated, rests with this board.
So the answer is you didn't reach out to the district attorney, you didn't reach out to the sheriff, and I don't believe you reached out to anybody at the courts, even though this does actually tie into all three of them, and two of them are under your oversight. You would think you would at least have a conversation with them to find out how this impacts them. I have nothing else.
Well, I want to thank the sheriff for coming and speaking today, and I want to emphasize one of the words that he said when he spoke. He referenced criminal warrant. He referenced criminal warrant. And I just think it's really important because it is his obligation to serve criminal warrants, and there's nothing in, Mr. Owens, is there anything in this resolution that keeps the sheriff from serving a criminal warrant that is signed by a judge?
No.
There's nothing. What we are talking about is civil detainers, which are not criminal, and our determination whether or not we will participate in civil detainers or whether or not we will not. Our responsibility is to protect the liability of the county. That is the responsibility of this board. That's why we are the sole contracting authority. So I think it's important that we understand there's legal precedent for the county being left holding the bag when it comes to the liability. The Galarza case in Lehigh County is where ICE had a civil detainer on somebody and asked the prison to hold that individual. And the prison held that individual. Did the prison check their immigration status? No, because the prison sees a civil detainer and the prison is asked by ICE to hold them, and they hold them. Did they turn out to be an American citizen that they held? Yes. Did they have to pay a massive hefty fine for that? Yes. This is a matter of the Board of Commissioners because this board has the fiduciary responsibility to protect the county. I am not opposed to ICE handing us a criminal warrant and cooperating with law enforcement under those means. When it comes to civil detainers, we've seen them on multiple cases get it wrong. Not to mention, we have them targeting members of our community that have green cards. We just had somebody who has a valid green card through 2032 picked up at their final probation meeting when they were getting their ARD thing taken out of their car. They had a DUI, and that's what they're going to have their green card removed on a DUI. That's what the precedent is going to be. But now they're detained at Moshannon Valley. They'll sit at Moshannon Valley and then have their green card removed and be sent back to a country that ethnically cleansed them. When they get back to that country won't give them papers. That country will give them a small amount of money to cross a border illegally back into a refugee camp that they spent most of their life in. And this represents roughly 50,000 people in our region, the Bhutanese Nepali community. So we can protect them because we can tell probation to not interact in that way, to not share with ICE about civil detainers. And I would also ask this of our solicitor. Were it to be the case that we had people in probation proactively, without even ICE, reaching out to them, proactively reaching out to ICE, asking them, hey, are you interested in this case? Are you interested in this person? Were that to be the case, would we potentially be liable if there was an error? Especially, I want to emphasize this, especially if the information that they are sharing was gained in their course of duty for Dauphin County.
So you're asking me to provide a legal opinion at a public meeting, which I'm uncomfortable doing, but I'll attempt to answer your question. There are so many permutations and fact patterns that would fall within that question that it's very difficult to answer. It is fairly easy for anyone to, with a pen and a tablet, to file a lawsuit in federal court under Title 42. So, of course, that could happen.
Do you believe the way in which ICE is operating right now in our county, potentially, if they are to be partnered with, can open us up to civil rights claims and lawsuits? Let's ask it that way. if we cooperate with civil detainers specifically.
I'm uncomfortable answering that in a public forum. And if you want to discuss that, I think we should have an executive session.
Well, I know the answer. The answer is yes. And we've seen it in other counties, and we're seeing it here. And I mean, I'm not even going to get into the reality of seeing what we're seeing in other spaces with masked individuals showing up. But what I will say is this: our courts work on the reality that you trust the courts. Our probation works on the reality that you trust probation is in it for your reentry, is in it for your rehabilitation, not in it to jam you up with a civil detainer. Also, what happens when you get assaulted and the only person who watched the assault happens to be an undocumented immigrant? You think they're showing up to court and testifying? This is going to create all kinds of problems. It is a legal gray area. I will concede that ground. But I do not concede the ground that we are not exposing the county to liability if we continue to cooperate with ICE on civil detainers. I want to emphasize again, because I do believe there is a bridge to both these sides here. We have individuals who have committed heinous crimes that are undocumented. And I will speak personally. I would want our county to work with ICE to find those individuals, including the fact that we passed a budget last year that included the addition of 2 more gang violence task force members. I am committed to public safety. I'm committed to public safety for our refugee community, for our immigrant community as well, and those experiencing the terror of this particular $170 billion investment in ICE. I mean, that is massive. They have more than enough resources. They don't need to take our local resources when they should be doing local policing.
I just want to follow up and say to the press and to the residents at home, the individuals who came here today, there is no welcoming county policy on the agenda, and this board knew it.
And just finally, I agree about the positions on a number of these issues. But on civil detainers, we've discussed this a multitude of times. Our prison has taken the position that we are not holding people past 12 midnight. And quite frankly, that's where the exposure of liability comes in. Once there is more than a day that would be settled for individuals who are documented and who should not be detained, if there is no federal civil protections, we're not going to hold you past midnight. We've made that proclamation. So if we're not going to put taxpayers at risk for individuals that picked up, that quite frankly shouldn't be picked up. They are released, and ICE is notified before midnight. And that's the one area we could effectuate, and we actually made sure that no one is going to be detained here past the day that they may be picked up on a civil detainer. So mentioning that is something that we have addressed and addressed a level of insurance that we are not going to keep people in jail. And the Garza case you talked about, it actually kept somebody who was a documented person, individual who was from the community. He was kept there for a couple of months, and there was a resulting lawsuit which was charged, and there was civil liability that had to be paid. That doesn't exist here in Dauphin County. So from my perspective, we've addressed the things that we can control, and we are in areas of trying to find additional protections. I am open to having those discussions with our human service agencies and the community.
I do want to say, just to reference the policy that Commissioner Hartwick is referencing, we have a policy at our prison where some prisons will hold 72 hours on civil detainment. It just means that, let's say you're incarcerated at Dauphin County Prison and you are released from incarceration. Let's say you have a court hearing and you're released. Some counties will hold for 72 hours for ICE to arrange for ICE to pick up. We do not hold for 72 hours. We hold through the remainder of the day for ICE to come pick up. But the idea that absolves us of liability during that time, we are still detaining somebody who that is another legal gray area where we can certainly still experience lawsuits if we detain somebody through midnight when they were released in the morning, if they are a United States citizen. And again, I want to emphasize that ICE has got this wrong in multiple cases, and they continue to ramp up their operations with, I think, limited administrative clarity. But any other comments before we move on? All right, so we are taking a vote. I believe there was a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
Motion does not carry.